Victor, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, doing well. So yeah, let's get straight into it. I know you're a new no BS kind of guy. You like to get straight to the point. So tell me who you are, what you do. Tell me this pen. Give me like the Victor Vatus highlight reel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 34. I'm from France. I left the motherland 12 years ago. I lived in Italy. I lived in Dublin in Ireland, and then I settled in Montreal, Canada, which is where I've been living for the last 10 years.
Mm,
I'm a dual citizen, French and Canadian, and I've always been in sales in some capacity for the past 10 years. So I rose through the ranks with my humble sales success. And last year I launched Sell Me the Pen, which is a recruiting company specialized in sales roles.
gotcha. Only a year old, and you've already got 5 employees, including yourself, right?
Yeah, so four employees and myself.
Interesting. What kind of was the catalyst to starting the company? What made you think that you didn't want to do what you were currently doing and pivot to having your own business?
Yeah, so it's the fourth business I start. The
Mm.
three others failed miserably. The first one I launched was in 2018. It was a lead generation company for IT
Mm.
firms in Montreal, which lasted a good 3 months, and then I shut it down. And then I launched two other SaaS companies, one
Mm.
called Make Sales and one called Trombone. They were all around the sales stuff, but
Mhm.
sadly they didn't work out. And to answer your question, I left after 3 years as a VP sales because I really felt like I had momentum with Sell Me This Pen, which I was doing on the side.
Mm.
So I had my 9 to 5 or my 6 to 7, and I was already doing Sell Me This Pen last summer. And when it finally took off from a revenue perspective, I was able to quit my employment and go full time.
Mhm. Do you have like a perspective on that in terms of like selling a service as compared to selling a product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about selling a service versus selling a software, and because that's what I've done so far.
Mhm.
There's pros and cons with both. I'm gonna touch base on something that people don't really talk about, which is feeding the people around you. And I
Yeah.
didn't have the luxury to not having a salary for 2 years, like I hear a lot of these SaaS founders do. Like, yeah, I was functioning on $500 per month for 2 years. I
Yeah.
have a daughter, my wife's pregnant, I have a mortgage, I live my life. So I can't really afford not to make money, right?
Yeah.
So SaaS is amazing, and I'm always going to have ideas in the back of my mind, and it's definitely
Mhm.
something I want to keep pursuing. But the services aspect was really intriguing for me because you can go as fast as you humanly can, and
Yeah.
if you're well organized, you can hit pretty large numbers pretty rapidly
Mhm.
compared to SaaS, which was is commonly referred to as the slow ramp up of death, and it takes typically 2 years to start seeing any kind of traction. Which
Mhm.
at the time I don't have that kind of time in front of me.
100%. 100%. Yeah, in terms of like scaling a service, there's that initial point where you're trying to get past just yourself, where you're trying to like expand beyond just doing things on your own. And I feel like that's the hardest part is productizing your service, is like making it so that you don't have to be there watching uh, every process and every deliverable. Um, and clearly you've kind of beat that obstacle, right? Because you've already got employees, 6 employees, including the dog, right? Um, so like, uh, how difficult was it for you to go beyond just doing things yourself and hiring your first employee?
Yeah, short answer, very difficult. And I'll even add a nuance to what you just said is on the recruiting side, in my
Yeah,
book, it's even more difficult, right? Because
yeah,
when I talk to a client and they look at my background and they see what I've done so far, and I say, look, I'm going to help you hire a sales or a marketing person, they trust me because that's my
yeah.
experience. I've been in the trenches long enough. So that
Mm.
resonates a lot with them. When then I tell them, well, the person that's gonna interview the folks we're gonna send your way is, you know, doesn't have the same background, they start getting worried. So that's where scaling a recruiting company is really
Mm-hmm.
difficult. It's how do you transfer all that knowledge that took you years and years of, failing in the trenches and understanding what really makes a what they call the A player to someone who's way younger in their career. So it's feasible,
Mm-hmm.
but it all comes down to motivation and really how people absorb the information. If I'm going to be super honest, I had
Yeah.
some hit and misses with people I've hired, but so far
Yeah.
so good. We have a strong team, and the more important thing is that my clients are happy, and they're coming back,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
reputation is perfect so far. So yeah, but it's a struggle, It's
What's the pace that you're growing at?
Yeah, and maybe to answer that question, I can also explain how I got to start the business
Yeah,
in the
for sure.
first place, because that's one of the questions you had asked at the beginning, and I went on with the hiring discussion because I love that
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. But the real story, okay? I was a VP sales. I'm French for a French company based in the
Mm-hmm.
US. I was already bilingual, and I had access to my CEO's LinkedIn profile because I was using it for hunting
Mm.
purposes. And so I was checking his inbox regularly, and at some point I saw this company reaching out to him and said, "Look, we're coming to the US and we'd love to talk to you."
Yeah.
And so they were a company that I could sell to. So I took the call and I introduced myself through his
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile. Say, look, I'm going to introduce you to Vic. And then I send them an email from my inbox. Okay. So I talked to the guy and they were about understanding, coming to the US, how it's
Yeah.
done, the experience, and so on. And since I had been employee number one, I had a lot to share. And so the guy's like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And I'm like, by the way, we could sell you leads and we
Mm-hmm.
would love to do that because that's what I was hoping to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, you should talk to my CEO. And so I'm like, all right, perfect. Well, I'll talk to the CEO. Even better for me, if I have airtime with the biggest decision maker, I'll take
Yeah.
it. So I talked to the CEO. And after half an hour, he's like, all right, Vic, I got to be honest. I like your style. Do you want to come and work with us and be our VP sales?
Mm.
Like, yeah, let's entertain the idea. Fast forward, I did probably 10 or a dozen interviews with them. We covered a lot of ground. And at the end, I ended up turning down their offer
Mm.
because things were going really well with my employer at the time. And so he said, look, we're looking for someone like you. And now you know everything there is to know about the company. So why don't you help us find our next VP sales?
Mm.
Which I always and they said, and then we're gonna pay you. Like, oh, people are getting paid to do that stuff. Yeah, for sure, I'll do it. And I did, and it took 6 weeks, and they hired someone that they're really happy with at the time. I got paid, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so then that VP sales, she calls me and she's like, look, I'm looking for two account executives. Can you help me? So I did it. I built a little website, sent the website
Yeah.
to some of my friends who are sales directors. And in the span of 6 weeks, I closed 7 deals.
Mm.
I was like, all right, that's it. That's my calling. I got a business. So I quit my job and I started. So that was for the how it all came
Mm-hmm.
to life. And as far as growing, I'm gonna be honest, for the second time today, it was the most stressful moment of my life. Like I said, I have a kid.
Yeah.
My family depends on me, and so the first 3 months, I barely got paid because it
Mm-hmm.
takes time, to build your
Exactly.
pipeline, find these candidates, have them accept their offer.
Right.
So I don't think I did any revenue in 2021, and
Mm-hmm.
I left my job on October 22nd. I had
Mm-hmm.
savings but that was it. I probably had 3 months ahead of me. And then everything started to turn around in January. I started finalizing these roles, getting paid,
Right.
hiring more folks, and that's when really the stress wore off. So to answer your question about growth, we're growing in terms of revenue every month, and it's just a very cyclical industry. Sometimes you have high demand, sometimes it's low, and there's only so many
Yeah.
hours during the day that we can, talk to candidates and source them, that at some point you're gonna hit a ceiling with how much work you can take on.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. It's good. It's a good problem to have, right? Can't take on all the work that you're getting.
Yeah, but sometimes, the flip side of this is you're gonna say no to someone, they're gonna send that mandate to
Mm.
someone else, and if they do a good job, they're not gonna call you back. So, but you
100%.
have to
Yeah.
be, I'm always very transparent with my clients, and I say, look, I don't have the bandwidth, and if I do have the bandwidth, I'll do everything in my power to get the contract for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And one
I'll continue to my.
one
Yeah.
note,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
on sales to me as well, it's we're diplomas. I mean, you know, in the grand scheme of things, diplomas don't matter. And
Yeah.
if you even come from a good family or if you come from different backgrounds, sales will flatten everything out and will give a chance to the folks that are motivated. I think is the best
Hmm.
way to put it.
Tell us about like where your profit margins are, like what your commission rates are like, and what your core expenses are.
Yeah, for sure. Main expensive, so employees, expenses, sorry,
Yeah.
employees. We have access to WeWork, so I pay that for
Mm.
everyone, laptops, computers, and whatnot. But the main recurring ones are the tools that we use, and I want to say LinkedIn comes number one.
Yeah.
One license is extremely, extremely expensive, and
Mm.
so you have to work and you work wisely in order to pay it back.
Yeah.
Sorry. So
Gotcha.
that takes a big chunk of the contracts that we sign.
Yeah.
And I guess something that is less tangible is just the time. Because when you
Mm.
work in recruiting as an external agency and you do like us, which is performance based, we're only getting paid the moment our candidates sign their contract. So really when everybody's happy, the
Mm.
client's happy, the company's happy, and the candidate, they felt like this was the best move for them. And so it happens every day, not necessarily with my firm, but any given firm that you
Yeah.
take on a project, you work for 6, 8, 12 weeks, and you're not going to make money at the end because
Yeah.
somehow the candidates were sourced internally, they were sourced by another company. So it's very, very volatile. That's why
Mm.
signing a contract in this industry is pretty easy, but signing a good one where you're really going to build that partnership and that proximity with the company is where the party's at.
Thank you for
Well,
sharing that.
time is your biggest asset as an individual, really, but as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, it's really putting a lot of stress on how much time you have. If you're a family man like myself, you want to
Yeah.
spend time with your family, you want to
Yeah.
spend time with your friends, you want to exercise because you know it's good for you, and so you want to get rid of all the stress, and so you kind of rearrange your whole life, I think. When I was the VP sales for that company, I had a lot of responsibilities. I had what they call the P&L, profits and losses, so P&L responsibility for the US.
Mm-hmm.
And my stress levels on 10 were probably a 2 compared
Yeah.
to my 8 or 9 that I have constantly right now. So I think one of the main things I've learned so far in my entrepreneurial journey is
Mm-hmm.
to know that if you give it your best during one day, then you really have to like completely unplug and stop that little hamster wheel in your brain saying, "Look, you haven't thought about this, and what if this happens?" And oh my gosh, this one,
Yeah.
and really sort of learn how to disconnect is the main thing because you kind of
Yeah.
recharge. And then I used to wake up at like I don't know 7:30 or 8, drop my daughter, go and start working at 9, and now
Yeah.
I'm up at 6 and I start my day at 6:45
Mm.
behind the computer and I finish my daughter comes back to school 5:30. I spend some time with her
Mm.
and then by 7 or 8 I'm back for an hour or two and then rinse and repeat. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty active on Reddit, and there was a guy saying, "Hey, whoever left the 9 to 5, what did you do?" I'm like, "Yeah, I left the 9 to 5, but now I'm on a 7 to 7 every day."
Yeah.
So you gotta know
Exactly.
what you're, be careful what you wish for.
How are you getting clients? What I think makes sense in your industry is referrals, right? I don't think you'd be getting too many from digital ads, especially in the B2B space, but you can speak on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll even give you a quick story on the first few clients because uh, so when I signed those mandates for the VP and then the AE, I created my website and then I sent it to a bunch of friends. And then one day, one guy was like, "Hey, by the way, I sent your name to this guy. He wanted to hire me. Looks like they're coming to the US." So I
Mm-hmm.
reached out to that guy. We ended up doing business together. I filled out a couple of roles for him. And then he said, "Look, I really enjoyed the service. You should talk to so and so, who's my investor." So I talked to him, and the investor said, "Oh, you should talk to ABC." So I talked to them,
Yeah.
signed them, and they were super happy. They said, "Oh, you should talk to XYZ." And so I kept unfolding that little
Mm-hmm.
thread, and I was able to close probably 10 contracts by just going like that and
Yeah.
asking for referrals and so on.
Mm.
Then my previous employer offered me a lot of work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who left the company I used to work for and changed companies, they called me. They said, "Hey, I saw that you're doing this. We have a need." And so
Yeah.
we signed. Um, Now more and more I do outbound,
Okay.
very targeted when I hear that there's a trigger event that I would assume they're coming to the US at this point because
Mm-hmm.
typically I work with European firms coming to the US. That's my
Mm.
niche. And the rest is really reputation based.
Mm.
Uh, the recruiting game, it's the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Everybody does that at some point. Um, but I'm told that the moment you start delivering good service and you have good values and you really do the work and they're happy, you're off to the races.
Mm. Gotcha.
But I've
Cool.
never tried paid advertising. I don't think
Yeah.
I'll ever do that in 2022. I'm hiring someone who's going to start in June to take care of the marketing portion. Um,
Yeah.
but it's really for brand awareness
Mm.
and going deeper in subjects that I'd like to touch base on.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, my my objective is not to have a 50 employee company where I'm gonna think I'm gonna lose sort of the touch that we bring
Mm.
right now. I want
Yeah.
to stay pretty lean, but focus on the jobs that are really interesting for us.
If you were to start over, right, go back to ground zero, back to the first floor, how would you fast track to where you are today, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I love the question. I think I would realize that there's good contracts and bad contracts to
Yeah.
sign. And so I've lost a lot of time on stuff that basically we're trying to fit a triangle into a circle and there's no way it's going to work. So
Mm-hmm.
now my main role is to educate my clients on what you should be expecting when hiring here. Because when
Mm.
they arrive, typically, you just raise funds. You're on top of the world, right? You're walking on water. And so you think
Yeah.
that people are going to throw themselves at you. And then you come here. There's a little sticker shock though, because the salaries are higher compared to
Mm.
Europe. And then you're
Mm.
like, well, where's everybody? Well, they haven't waited for you because there's literally 10 firms doing the exact same thing as you do that are 100 times bigger than you. So now you have to
Right.
create your story and make it enticing for them
Mm.
and be more creative with the way you recruit. And you have to give them the love that they need when they're really not sure if they want to join you, etc. And so
Mm.
I would challenge my clients more, educate them more to eventually
Yeah.
uh, make sure that they reach their objectives. So that's what I would do.
Mm.
Now I do it, but I wish I had known that in September last year.
Mm.
The punchline here is really twofold. Number one is only you can believe in yourself, and if you really want to do something,
Yeah.
you shouldn't listen to anyone saying no, which is something that a lot of folks have said, but I'm the living example that it's true.
Mm.
And the second one is, especially in the recruiting space, give people a chance, because if they come with crazy enthusiasm, they prepared, they present well, and they seem to be super excited about what you do.
Yeah.
Already they've done 90% of the way. The rest you can teach them, and it's not
Mm.
rocket science. We're
Yeah.
not saving lives here.
What do you attribute to succeeding? Like, what's the one thing that you attribute to your success, to where you are today? I'm gonna guess that it's motivation, like you mentioned before. I would agree with that, but maybe you want to speak on that.
Yeah, so motivation, I think number one, enthusiasm. I really like the recruiting space, and the fact that I've been in sales now for 10 years and that I only recruit almost sales folks. I love that stuff. And so that's
Yeah.
one piece. But the other one I think is I'm extremely, extremely focused. I
Mm.
work from home. I take half-hour lunch breaks, and the rest of the time, my day is really organized around being the most productive possible. So
Mm.
uh, I, you know, I've been told that that was my reason why I succeeded when I was selling fiber optics, for example. I was never at the coffee
Yeah.
machine. I don't smoke. I wasn't taking cigarette breaks. Uh, I would attend these, after hours for a drink or two, but then I would prepare my prospecting lists and I would be in the office at 7. I would prepare my
Mm.
stuff to start cold calling at 8. And so it's about the standards, I think, that you set for yourself, because nobody else is going to set them for you. Even if your boss
Yeah.
tells you, listen, Ahmed, you're going to have to do this and this, only you set the bar. And so I read a quote one day that really stuck with me. It was a sales guy who said, I missed the day where they talked about the objective. And so I thought that the objective for the year was the quarterly
Yeah.
objective. So I started working as
Yeah.
like crazy to reach the quarterly objective. And then everybody was like, well, who the hell is this guy? And so by not knowing what the ceiling should be in terms of how much work you need to put in, well,
Yeah.
that's really when you unleash your potential. That's the
Mm.
philosophical aspect of my
Mm.
interview here, but that
Yeah. I like that.
mindset really helped me.
What's your end goal with this?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very natural for services-based companies, founders to
Yeah.
think about software and say, oh yeah, if I could, have something that prints money while I'm doing
Yeah.
something else and I'm writing blog posts, that would be amazing. Um,
Mm.
and so obviously, it's something that is in the back of my mind, but I'm not looking for a product to build and then I'll start building it. I
Mm.
want to be in the trenches long enough and go as deep as I can into the nitty-gritty and learn everything that I know, so that there's gonna
Mm.
be an issue that I'm gonna face where a product is gonna be the answer to, and maybe I'll start developing it and commercialize it. Um, but the flip
Yeah.
side of the
Mm.
the job that I have right now is that, again, my last example, I interview around 10 to 15 people per day. Okay. And
Yeah.
as a company, we probably interview 100, 100 to 200 folks on a weekly basis. It happens
Mm.
at least twice per day that I have candidates tell me, hey, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me like live in
Yeah.
person. And so at the beginning, I was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And then I started asking, but why are you telling me this? And they're like, well, a
Yeah.
lot of these firms, they'll send you a questionnaire. They'll ask you to
Mm.
record yourself video, one-sided interviews and whatnot. Uh, Fill out whatever, platform. And so
Mm.
you give me live time of your time to talk to me. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I
Yeah.
want to learn more about you, because I checked your profile. I think you might be a fit, and I have some questions to see if you might be that person. And so
Mm.
that's where tech, is not relevant anymore in the recruiting
Mm.
space. And that's also what my clients, I think, really appreciate, is that when I send a candidate, to them, and then I send 10, and they really shortlist two or three, and they'll ask me my
Yeah.
opinion. I'm not going to base myself on a questionnaire it took them 6 minutes to fill and say, oh, look, this guy is a type C. Well, you should hire him. I'll be like,
Mm.
well, I talked to the guy or the girl, and we had a great conversation. As far as the scorecard goes, they tick all the boxes, and what's a plus is this, what's a
Yeah.
con is this, and this is a human interaction. I think
Yeah.
human beings are wired to connect with each other, and so the
Right.
more tech you put in between that connection, the more friction you're gonna add.
Mm.
So that's the very long-winded answer to tell you. I don't know if SaaS is gonna be the solution. Maybe it is. Maybe I'll find something and I'll be like, all right, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just keep doing this until
Mm.
I don't know when, but so far I'm having too much fun.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I mean, from your response, sounds like you're kind of